Good morning. Hello to you all. We are going to start the second day of the WAVA meeting. Yesterday we had amazing presentations and 300 attendants in the YouTube broadcasts. So I'm very excited to hear what the presenters will bring to us today. I'm sure that we will also have wonderful presentations. So let's begin with the first speaker, Professor Sayamon. She's from Thailand, and she will talk about how to manage veterinary anatomical teaching during COVID situation in Thailand. Then Sayamon, it's your time.
Okay, so I will share my screen right now. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
And can you hear me? Can you hear me clearly?
Clearly.
Okay. Okay, so I will start right now. Okay. Good evening, all the audience. And first of all, I have to say thank you for the WAVA committee for organizing this online meeting. My topic today is about how we manage on the veterinary anatomical teaching and studying during COVID-19 situation in our country, Thailand. Okay, we have to date back for the time before COVID-19 situation. In general, our department, we are responsible for three main subjects, which were anatomy, histology, and embryology. And at the beginning of this year, we are in the second semester of the academic year, and in that semester, we offer the Anatomy 1 class, which will be the dissection of the dog, mainly only for the dog, and the embryology class. The learning module is about 100% hand-on lab and 100% lecture at the faculty. It means that the student will come to the faculty, and then they will have about 1 hour for the lecture for each time, and then they will go to the lab, and they will have 3 hours of the lab for each time. So the whole course will have about 30 hours of the lecture and about 90 hours of the lab. And this is how it looks like in the anatomy laboratory. And I have to say about before the COVID situation, because there are some instruments that we have been using for a long time, and it works well with during this hard time. In anatomy class, we have been using the soft cadaver for about 2 years ago, because our university, Chulalongkorn University, they have the policy to reduce the use of the formalin. So the Center for the Soft Cadaver was established, and this is the only and the first soft cadaver center for veterinary study in Thailand. And I don't know that maybe also in Southeast Asia as well. And the soft cadaver, after the students have been using the soft cadaver, when they finish each class, they have to keep the soft cadaver in the cold storage room like this one. And that, of course, when they are learning with the soft cadaver, it has to be in the air-conditioned room to preserve the quality of the soft cadaver. And the student, they will have 1 soft cadaver, 1 dog per five students. And the soft cadaver, they have the texture just like the dog that just died. So for the texture, it is better than the formalin fixed cadaver. And that we also, not only the lecture and the lab class, we also the problem-based learning by using the smart classroom class. And the students, they really like this kind of the learning, because they feel like that they can use the anatomy knowledge for integrate with the highest study, such as in the surgery class or even in the medicine class. And we have developed some of the tools that we call the mixed reality tools, which look like the 3D model like this one, which I will show you later on. Okay, when it comes to the early COVID situation during March and April, at that time we were advised to end all the class within the middle of April. normally the semester will end at the end of May, but then we are advised to end the class at the middle of April. But when the situation came worse, we are advised to end the class as soon as possible. So some of the lectures have to be skipped or have to be combined, and sometimes we have to use some extra time for the student, maybe 6 p.m. in the evening to online the lecture online, or and for the laboratory, luckily that we have some of the videos that we have recorded for the last year, and then we just upload that in the platform, in the Blackboard platform, and the student can learn by themselves later on. And for the examination, we have to use the online examination by using Blackboard. That is very clumsy because we did that for the first time for the lab examination. Okay, and for the embryology class, we have been using the virtual microscope for about 5 years ago. So they get very used to the online with the virtual microscope as well. And this is how the virtual microscope look like. From the beginning, we will have the slide, and then we will use the slide scanner to scan the slides, and we will put the file in the server. And when the student come to the faculty, they will go directly to their computer station, and then this computer station will connect directly to the server. So when they come to the class, they can learn by using the computer as they use the microscope to study all of these slides. But during the early COVID situation in Thailand, we are at the middle of the course, so the remaining class has to combine, and also the examination will be online. But in our opinion, we feel like that the embryology class didn't have as many problem as for the anatomy class. When come to the new semester, during June and July, it is a semester break, and we have a lot of meeting and planning for what we are managed with our teaching for our students. So there are some regulation from our faculty committee that we have planned for several situations, such as if it is a new normal situation, if it is the surveillance situation, or if the situation is getting serious. Right now, we are at the surveillance situation that we still are aware of the COVID situation to outbreak again in Thailand. And so there are some regulation from the committee that the students, they can attend the on-site class. It means that they can come to the faculty only for a specific day. In example, for the second year students, which are the students that we offer the anatomy and histology class right now, they can come to the faculty only on Monday. But for Tuesday until Friday, there will be some other class of the student. So it means that the student, they cannot meet each other in different year of the student. And for the laboratory, we can have the on-site laboratory that the student can come to the lab, only 30% of the lab for both anatomy and histology. And that on the day that the student come to the faculty, they have to share the time for both anatomy class and histology class. So it means that we have to divide the student into half. So like now we have about 130 students. So we have 65 students go to the anatomy class in the morning, and another 65 students will go to the anatomy class in the afternoon. So it means that the instructor on that class, we will have about 4 instructors for each class. All of that 4 instructors have to teach the same topic twice on that day for the on-site laboratory. And the students were advised for the social distancing, and they have to be checked for the fever, the temperature checking before they enter the elevator and going into the laboratory. And they have to wear masks and also the gloves, and the alcohol gel are available in all the room. Okay. For the platforms used for our anatomy study, platform, we have been using Blackboard for several years ago, and but for before COVID, we have been using Blackboard just for the document management, that we upload the handout, or we have the announcement, or we ask the student to do the assignment, or we have sometimes we made the student to do the quiz in the Blackboard. But like now, we have to use the Blackboard as well for the online examination, which this platform will be used for all the subjects in our faculty. And the Blackboard, we also have the Echo 360, which connect to the Blackboard. And this is using for the upload the video presentation. Then the student, they can come back and study about the video, maybe the discussion video later on at any time. And for the online lecture, we decide to use the Microsoft Teams. In the last semester, we have tried a lot of platforms such as the Zoom and also the live meeting. But then the student, they request that we should use the only one platform for all of the subjects. Otherwise, they will get confused. And for the anatomy and histology class right now, we also create the live group for rapid communication with the students, because we cannot online the Microsoft Teams all the time. So when the student, they have the question after class, and if they want the quick answer, then they will text in the live group, and then there will be the instructor can answer them, so they will not feel like they were left behind during this situation. For the Facebook Live, we use that to demonstrate the dissection lab for the anatomy tool lab, because we have tried the Microsoft Teams first, and we found out that it was delayed, and the Facebook Live is much better. And in this figure, show how the Blackboard look like. The student, they will have the course according to what they enroll, like this, and they will have the account for the Blackboard for each of the student. Okay. For the according to different class, like now we offer 2 class, anatomy 2 and histology. I will talk about each class. For the histology class, the lecture will be online 100%. And for the lab class, we will have 30% on site and 70% online. But how the online class look like? First of all, let me show you this video. The student have to connect to the server by using the virtual personal network. Each student there will have their own account to connect to the faculty and the university server. And they use the VPN, and after that they will use the program that we call Guest Viewer to study this. Okay, this is how the Guest Viewer looks like. Then they will connect to the server, and they can do this anywhere, not just only in the lab. Okay, and if they want to learn on each particular slide, such as one, they just click on the slide, and then they can learn the same as they use the real microscope. Okay. For the histology class, again, for the on-site lab, as we said that we have to separate the student to be half-half, and this is about 65 students in the class, and another 65, they will go to the anatomy lab at the same time. And on the day that they come to the faculty, to the histology lab, they can access to both the computer station and also the microscope. And the Blackboard and Echo 360 is also for the document management. During the lab time, we will we will open the Microsoft Teams all the time. If the student have any question, they can ask us by using the Microsoft Teams, or they can use the microphone and ask us, or otherwise they can also chat, and we can, as soon as possible, reply them. if some of the students, if they have their own computer, sometimes they don't want to share with the others, so they can use their own computer in the lab as well. Right now, we have been teaching a histology class for about 3 weeks, and there are things that we have to be concerned that we found out that the student can access to the real microscope less than usual. Before COVID situation, the student can access to the microscope for the whole semester. They will give they can borrow the microscope, one microscope per one of the student, and they will obtain the glass slides for them to study anytime. But right now they cannot come to the university, so they cannot access to the real microscope as much as usual. And we think that the learning outcome may be lower than expect, but this may not be completely correct, because we still be at the beginning of the semester. But from the evaluation last semester, the students, they complained that they like the interactive learning, such as the PBL, the smart classroom class, than just only for the online and watching the video. And the students, they also said that they have no enthusiasm for further study. I think that this may be because of the lack of the communication with each other. They have to be apart, and that they cannot have the discussion or the consulting with their older student in the other years. And the online course has some obstacles, such as the server, because, as you know, that the slide that come from the slide scanner are very big, and then we have to increase the server capacity. And that sometimes the student, they go to the server, they go to the math drive at the same time. So we have to develop a new platform and a new application, so the student, they can use their cell phone and their tablet to learn about histological slide by using the browser. And any browser is okay, both Safari and also Google Chrome. And for the computer access, there are about 101% of the students that they don't have the computer at home, so they have to use the computer at the computer lab or at the library. But they have to tell us about this, so we can manage that for them. And for the anatomy class, like now we are in the comparative anatomy, we will study several species, such as the ruminant and horse and pig, and also the cat. The lecture will be 100% online via the Microsoft Teams, as the same as the histology. And also the lab will be 70-30% the same regulation as for histology. But the online anatomy lab has a lot of problem, because we cannot find a suitable platform for demonstrating that for the student. And also for the on-site lab, as we have very short time, so the student cannot access for the dissection. So we have to prepare the specimen for them and then just show and tell. And we try a lot. We try as much as we can to purchase the 3D commercial application and upload that in the iPad, and they can access that on the day that they come to the university. That iPad will be in the Innovation Center for learning in our faculty. And that we have the mixed reality tools. The mixed reality tool is some kind of half virtual reality and augmented reality that has been developed by the staff in our faculty, and also from the Faculty of Engineering. And I show you later how it look like. And this is how the anatomy class look like. Our instructors try to broadcast the anatomy lab by using the Facebook Live on the day that have the online class, and all the specimen have been dissected and prepared for the student and waiting for them. So on the day that they come to the faculty, they can learn the specimen quickly, but they will lack of the hand-on skills. So the things that we found out that it is not school for the anatomy class is that the student, as I said before, that they lack of the hands-on skill. We don't have enough time for them for this section because before COVID situation, they can have extra time in the evening if they want to dissect more. And we cannot find a suitable platform for the anatomy lab demonstration. And that the PBL in the smart classroom, we have to see the situation. If it's getting worse, then we have to skip that. And this is the PBL class is the student they request for that. And this is how the mixed reality tool look like. This is the lever of the luminant, look like this one, that you will have the paper that connect to the camera, and then when you move the paper, and the model will move as well. Okay, so here is my last slide, and I just want to show what we have been using for teaching the student during last time and also this time. This one is the stomach of the luminant, and also show the blood supply of the stomach as well. And the above one, this one we have been using not only for the anatomy class, but also for the physiology class and also for the luminant medicine class, because they can show how the food come into the stomach and regurgitation back to the reticulum, something like this. Okay, so I hope that my presentation can share some idea, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that nice presentation. We'll go to our next presentation, please. It is from Dr. Christianne Magee from Colorado State University. It's entitled Using Virtual Animal Anatomy to Bridge the COVID-19 Gap in cadaveric access. Dr. Magee, please.
Thank you very much for the introduction as well as the invitation to present to you all today. I'm honored by this opportunity. So as you know, I'm coming to you today from Colorado. We're located in Fort Collins at the base of the Rocky Mountains. While our views are typically gorgeous of those Rocky Mountains, unfortunately right now we have several forest fires burning to our west, and our sunsets at times are clear or quite hazy for us. So it's made COVID symptom tracing a little bit challenging right now with the smoke and the haze. But for the most part, our COVID lines have been steady, although our students are on their way back to campus, and we're hoping to hang on to in-person teaching for a little bit and not have a resurgence of cases. I teach predominantly undergraduate and graduate animal anatomy. My colleague Anna Fales directs the Veterinary Anatomy program, which is held predominantly in the fall semester. So she's starting that teaching really tomorrow. And then in the spring, we have some electives for those students. But what I do is a domestic animal anatomy pro section course for about 130 undergraduate students. We have 3 hours of lecture with 2 hours of lab each week. I have about 20 to 30 teaching assistants every year. These are students who took the course in a previous year and are coming back to continue to learn anatomy as well as to help teach anatomy. We have a combination of both lecture and laboratory exams as well as other types of assessments and interventions. These laboratory exams, importantly, are roughly 75% identification, so first order, what is this type of questions, and then only 25% higher order, which we think is appropriate for this undergraduate type of course. The other course that I then have is a domestic animal dissection course. So we consider this at the graduate level. We have usually about 16 students who are pursuing a master's degree in animal anatomy, and they will do 6 hours of dissection every week. They only have laboratory exams in this class. These are 75% of those higher order questions and only 25% identification. They also have weekly table checks because these are the specimens that I rely on for the undergraduate course. So they're dissecting my prosected specimens for the other class. This class then precedes the undergraduate course by a few days. We check, make sure the dissections are accurate, as well as making sure that the students know what they're supposed to be looking at and are learning the material as we move along. I also then have a 16-student domestic animal case studies course. This is 2 hours a week of integrated case studies. There's no laboratory component here, but they do rely heavily on the laboratory access that they typically have through dissection to be able to work with the specimens and better understand them. This is the population I'm going to be talking about today. This is the population that we took through the COVID transition this spring, and this is the group that we used our virtual animal anatomy tool for. Virtual Animal Anatomy was initially developed and produced by my colleague and mentor, Ray Whalen. Many of you may know it first as the Virtual Canine Anatomy program, and that's really our flagship program. It's the program that's most complete, but since I joined the team about 7 years ago, we've been adding equine, feline, and bovine anatomy to the program. So I thought it was better than, instead of calling them different names, if we put them all together and simply called it Virtual Animal Anatomy. So it may be something you're familiar with. I just changed the name on you. What it looks like is both directional terms, so giving students an orientation. Is this rostral? Is this cranial? Where are we on the animal? To osteology, and then myology. We separate out the different regions as sectional or regional anatomy, and then move through the scaffolding of their learning from osteology into myology and neurovascular structures. As you can see, we provide quizzes as well as movies, and then students can change anatomy programs and move between species as they're learning. We see the program then as an interactive anatomical atlas. So students can interact with it to prepare for the laboratory or to guide them through their laboratory session. If there is active dissection going on, we feel that the dissection guide that's present in the program can then guide the students again to prepare for the laboratory experience or to ensure that they're following the steps accurately when they're in the laboratory experience. Importantly, because it's cadaveric dissection and a layer-to-layer approach, students can move to a previous layer when in the laboratory structures may be removed, but in the program, they can put those structures back on the specimen. We also have an embedded study guide with embedded quizzes that the students can take. Now, oftentimes their confidence level after completing these quizzes is a little bit higher than what actually their performance will be in the laboratory. And that's because, as we all know, there's so much variation in our species that we're from dog to dog using in a laboratory for cadaver access, that when they get comfortable with a virtual program, doesn't always translate to what their performance is going to be in the laboratory. Now, I'm going to show a little video of an interaction here, and hopefully my audio remains, but as the user starts the program, they can scroll through to select the region that they'd like to study. I selected the mandible here, that I'd like to look more at the ramus of the mandible and particularly the features on the ramus of the mandible. You can see that they're color-coded and highlighted to differentiate a substructure on another one or foramina. There's also audio components, the ability to zoom, and most importantly for us teaching in the virtual environment, the ability for us to rotate these specimens. So by selecting rotate specimen, it brings up a new window, and these rotatable objects actually have links that you can access and embed into an assessment or share with a student to say, hey, we should go look at the canine mandible and make sure that you understand this correctly. Now, our students access this through their learning management system, although we are hoping to launch a single user platform this week. I will caution you, I know we talked a little bit about ExamSoft and other lockdown types of browsers yesterday. The rotatable objects are not accessible if you're putting those links in your lockdown browser. The student can't then come out and pull up the rotatable object if they're in that lockdown browser. So what is my role really at CSU? For the last few years, I've been establishing what we refer to as a learning ecology for animal anatomy. And this is not only the environment that supports discovery and retention of anatomical knowledge, but also retention of students in animal anatomy. We've been using evidence-based best practices to develop that program in our animal anatomy program. And as many of us refer to starting vet school or starting an anatomy class, it's kind of like getting run over by that fire hose. It's a little bit overwhelming at first. We don't want the students to feel that way. We want them to feel like there's a constructive environment. So we have scaffolded their learning. We've provided differentiated instruction. We've provided numerous interventions to catch them before they're failing, to make sure that they know what resources are available to them and are utilizing them correctly, as well as a sense of community. And that's where the teaching assistants are very important for that. So ultimately, we want them to engage, to perform well, to be retained, and also to retain that knowledge in a more constructive manner. How we do this then is with our virtual anatomy program. We know it supports that learning ecology because it enhances our learner control. Students feel like they can study the material outside of the laboratory just as effectively as when they're inside the laboratory, which gives them a better sense of control of their education. We also know that it improves teaching efficacy, particularly in a dissection course. If I look at the number of questions that students ask or the amount of time that faculty spend with those individual students, it's not that the faculty are spending any less overall time doing excellent teaching, but we're spending more time doing the better types of teaching rather than answering the more simple questions that the students could probably do on their own if they had the right resources. More importantly, it also improves learning efficiency. So my high-performing students in the undergraduate course, my A students, if you will, actually use the virtual program more, particularly before the laboratory, to prepare for that laboratory experience, and then spend less overall time studying because they're more efficient about it. And we know that our students need a certain number of hours every week to be successful in the course, to study outside of our regularly scheduled laboratory periods. So it's good to know that we're helping them to reach that goal much more efficiently with the program rather than overwhelming them with resources. More recently, the learning tool interoperability, learning management system, interactive platform, we've been able to use as an intervention tool. So I can look at student access to the virtual program, and if they're not engaging in the virtual program based on their learning management system student activity levels, if they're not engaging at least once or twice a week in that platform, then I can reach out to them and ask them if they have the resources they need. Do they know about the resources? And rather than having to look amongst 130 students for someone who might be missing in a laboratory, I can use this as a virtual type of tool and look at my student learning analytics to be able to provide this intervention. So in the last 6 years, we've really studied what do we at CSU need to teach anatomy. And we've always considered cadavers to be an important part of our anatomical instruction. We're fortunate to have phenomenal faculty and staff to help facilitate this instruction. And we know we need time. We need time with the students. We need time in the laboratory. But what happened this spring is that we didn't have access to our cadavers. So what did we do in response? Well, as many of you know, we made our program freely available to people worldwide. It had to be managed on a learning management system, but we had more than 100 academic programs and more than 12,000 student users from March to June using our program for free. And we were happy to provide that access. As we continue, we have dropped the price of the subscription simply because I've got to keep the support staff and the servers going. Otherwise, I would continue to give it away for free. At CSU, as I described those 3 primary classes, we had more than 200 students that we transitioned into that online environment. We utilized virtual animal anatomy with our learning management system Canvas and other remote access tools, including Microsoft Teams and Zoom, to engage those students in learning as well as their assessments. We also developed numerous new tools for our student assessment. So our first new piece that we created were virtual laboratory tools. First, the Zoom personal meeting room. We created a new Zoom license that was just for our animal anatomy cohort of students. This allowed them to use a single web link that they could always access. It was password protected, and our teaching assistants or teaching team members could easily claim the host function, and that would enable them to move students into breakout rooms or have greater control of the session itself. With this personal meeting room, we took those 27 teaching assistants as well as our faculty and staff and created 47 hours a week of virtual laboratory time that was staffed with the teaching team. Sometimes these were more highly encouraged synchronous times with the faculty. Other times it was simply a teaching assistant sitting in Zoom waiting for a student to drop in. This gave the students asynchronous as well as some degree of synchronous access to the teaching team and helped them to feel like they were still connected with us. We also used this personal meeting room to answer student questions during exams. We talked about this a bit yesterday. We were encouraged to give prolonged periods of time for students to complete an exam. So we had roughly a 10-hour window during a day for the student to complete a 2-hour exam. Now, we would staff that Zoom time with various members of the teaching team. And if a student had a question about their exam, they could pop into the personal meeting room, ask the question to the teaching team member, and then go back and finish their exam. Again, helping them to feel like we were still there for them, even though we were no longer in the laboratory. We also used Microsoft Teams, and we were encouraged to use Microsoft Teams first by our university, and then realized that it was a much more secure, because it was an invitation-only type of environment, for us to have our virtual laboratory assessments for our dissection students, as well as our secure teaching team meetings. If we're talking about the exam, I don't want to be in Zoom in a breakout room with a student who might accidentally pop in if I'm talking about our exam prep for the next week. So we used Microsoft Teams for these more secure sessions. We also created new assessments. So for the undergraduate course, we could no longer have our traditional laboratory exam. And we were concerned that the students wouldn't be diving into the material as deeply as they needed to be. So we created these guided studies. I want to emphasize that they're guided, not adaptive. If a student got the question wrong, it didn't guide them to the content. It asked them to understand if they understood the content, if they wanted to continue to study more. So we don't have the capacity for adaptive in our Canvas tool, but we did have the capacity for guided, where they didn't get the question wrong if they said they needed more help and then pursued those links. So we did extend the amount of time that they could use to take these assessments and gave them multiple opportunities to come back and do them, so that way they could feel like they had some degree of mastery. We used hotspot functions. So we would ask the student to identify a particular region, and then we would follow that up with more of the higher order questions about what is the function of this region, what would happen if there was a lesion in this region, to make sure that they were digging through all of the material. And we would send them back to the virtual program with links or links to our course content if they had missed a section or a module in their learning. Now, our summative assessments were provided for our dissection students. And as I mentioned before, our dissection students have weekly table checks. Every Tuesday, the teaching team, performs a group table check with a dissection team. We'll ask them to identify 10 different anatomical structures. And then for each anatomical structure, we will ask a series of follow-up questions. It's pretty simple to do this in the laboratory. We make sure we do our first one together as a team to make sure that the team is all on the same page. And then we break up to take care of the other 15 dissection groups. We couldn't do this online. We certainly couldn't have that cadaveric experience. We couldn't dissect a cadaver and have them with some sort of live stream identify what we were pointing to. So it took us a little bit to come up with this plan, but what we did was we used those rotatable links in the virtual program, and in Teams would send the dissection students this slide deck, and they would go through each slide. They would access the link. It would bring up a rotatable object, and then I, as the faculty person or a member of my teaching team, would then ask the dissection students a series of questions about that particular object after the students had identified it. Now, what I liked also about Microsoft Teams, and I understand that Zoom and Teams are starting to come a little bit closer together in terms of functionality, but in the spring, what we found was that Teams would have the students' initials when they would request to share control, and you could see that same level of hesitation as their cursor would hover over the anatomical structure that we were asking them to identify. And so we would see that same level of identification, rotation of the object, and connection with the object in this Teams assessment as we would go through their virtual table check. Now, in order to be able to accomplish this, we also had to develop a new assessment tool, and we used Google Forms for this. Typically, again, in the laboratory, my team will disperse to do all of the table checks, and we'll have forms that we'll fill out. Did the student get it right? Did the student get it wrong? And then someone at the end of that period has to collate those 20 forms. Well, Google Forms allows us to essentially create the same rubric, the same series of yes or no, did they get it right? More importantly, it allowed us to embed the correct answers and the rubric for our assessment into the Google form, and then synchronously, so all 5 of my teaching team members would be performing these assessments in the virtual ethos at the same time with our different dissection groups. And then the Excel spreadsheet at the end, the Google sheet at the end, would collate all those scores easily for me to import them immediately into our learning management system rather than having to track down my teaching team to get that information. So the Google Forms for synchronous assessment are definitely something we will keep in the future, and I would strongly encourage people to use in this virtual environment. So what did we learn about teaching during spring of 2020? Well, we learned that asynchronous course materials really allowed students to self-pace their learning. Admittedly, we rebooted our 2019 spring lectures, and the students said that they were not as highly useful as talking to us or being in the virtual sessions with us. Sometimes we would talk about things in that spring 2019 session that wasn't necessarily relevant for 2020, but they appreciated all of our other efforts and appreciated that that was one place where we could save time and focus our efforts in other places for them. The Zoom virtual labs were also highly successful environments for anatomical learning and productive failure. If you've ever used the annotate function in that Zoom lab, there was typically a lot more students when I was hosting a Zoom session than, say, one of the other teaching assistants was hosting a Zoom session. So if I had to manage engaging 20 to 30 other students in a Zoom session, I couldn't necessarily call out to a student, please identify something, please tell me what you think this is. But when we use the annotate function, I could say, please identify, all of you using the annotate function, where a particular structure is. And so they would all individually put their marker and their cursor on that structure. And then if they got it wrong, no one knew who they were. And so they felt a lot more confident engaging in that environment when their name wasn't tied to their failure necessarily. So really, we considered that to be an opportunity for them to engage, and really for me to engage with those students in some degree of anonymity for their learning. I also found that when we gave exam questions that were more higher order in the now Canvas online environment, I had greater confidence in that student's performance. Now, as I said, our initial exams were some degree of laboratory and lecture, but mostly identification in the laboratory. We tried to keep that identification in the first exam and quickly realized that the students were simply recognizing the photographs. They were recognizing the structures and maybe not fully understanding what they were looking at and what they were answering. So for the second exam that we gave in the online environment, we moved to more higher order exam questions and saw a better distribution of student performance that I think more accurately reflected their learning as it had in the first part of the semester. We will definitely, if and when we come back in the spring, continue to use Zoom laboratories. I think having office hours or availability outside of the laboratory is going to be important. We'll continue to use those formative assessments to guide students through the materials, and we'll also continue to use those Google Forms. So forced to innovate, but grateful that we were able to do that. I also learned quite a bit, as some of you know, about software distribution, security, and accessibility. So we've made quite a few adjustments to the program since March, improvements overall, and we'll continue to innovate in this space. I mentioned the learning ecology. These are results that are pending the Institutional Review Board's human subjects approval, but we essentially asked students if they agreed or disagreed with whether or not virtual animal anatomy helped them to learn anatomy, if our COVID transition was a success, and for our dissection students, if they thought dissection was necessary for providing that deeper understanding of anatomical relationships. I can't give you the actual results, but I can tell you as an instructor, my impressions are that these students agreed with all of these topics and that we were able to support their learning and their successful transition. Though they missed dissection, they knew why we weren't able to continue it and still felt confident about their anatomical learning, thanks to our virtual program and our efforts. We do have an institutional review board also pending for those additional COVID users. We'd like to also ask about their user experience. So that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions about our virtual program, please email us at vvet@colostate.edu or email me directly. I greatly appreciate your time. I also have to thank my team, anyone who's ever emailed back and forth. Andrea, Andrew, Brittany, all helped me handle the communications. Ray Whalen has been our program and my mentor for many years now, and I've got numerous fantastic faculty and students who I get to work with every day. So I'm very grateful for such an exceptional team. And with that, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for this great presentation, Dr. Magee. Thank you for showing us this fantastic resource as the QA. And so now we can go to the next presenter. Now we have Dr. Ashraf Saber from the University of Sadat City in Egypt. He's the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Veterinary Anatomy also. So, Dr. Saber.
Yes. Did you see my PowerPoint?
Not yet. I can see your screen, but not the PowerPoint.
I'm presenting here, so PowerPoint.
Yeah, it's not a new window.
You are presenting.
No, you are already presenting. I think that the PowerPoint window is back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that he's gone. He clicked on the wrong button. We can wait some minutes to have him back. Yeah, he's back. Your microphone is off.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
So did you see now?
Yeah, I can see now.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving the chance to present my challenges facing teaching and examination of veterinary anatomy in Egypt during Corona pandemic. This presentation will focus on how we managed the official suspension of the study in the universities in Egypt since 14th of March 2020 until now. Challenges were, number one, how to finish the semester syllabus. Number two, how to prepare the exams, especially the practical ones. Two ways were adopted. Number one, the faculty decided to use PowerPoint presentations with audio comments and send it to the dedicated WhatsApp groups for the first and second year students. Number two, some faculties used the university platform where lecturers uploaded their PowerPoint presentations and the students could then download them. Both methods worked well. Videos also of comparative anatomy were already prepared by the departments to help in studying anatomy. Also, videos of comparative anatomy produced by College of Veterinary Medicine, University of Minnesota, were also available to the students together with other videos produced by the native universities, Cairo, Zagazig, and Suez Canal universities, for all topics of anatomy, of course. Videos of 3D anatomy and applied anatomy available on YouTube and relevant websites were also used. So that is to say, many sources of distance learning were available for the students. They can choose what they want. The students have had the chance to contact staff members via WhatsApp, Zoom, emails, or cell phones to inquire and comment on the lectures. And let us say a positive point of e-learning is the direct contact with the students. About 25% used it. The semester ended by the end of May. Instead of a written exam, Ministry of Higher Education suggested to prepare one essay or small research article, not less than 10 pages, on topics given to the students, including abstract, introduction, keywords, topic, discussion, and references, not less than 5 references. The students were given 6 weeks as a time limit to finish and send their work to their professors. So that is to say, a sort of book exam instead of the written one in the examination halls. Each university gave its instructions to the students how to write a research paper, to staff members how to evaluate this paper. The marking was either pass or fail. The practical exam in dissecting rooms was replaced by MCQ sheet. The marking was also either pass or fail. So that is the template of the paper, cover page, introduction, terms, keywords, and evaluation sheet, the student's name and year section, and the marking pass or fail. Students were permitted to use the Egyptian Knowledge Bank, AKB, as a source of references. To ensure fair exams, our university established a measurement and assessment center, which aims to, number 1, automating the examination process, number 2, establishing a questions bank, number 3, continuous evaluation of the students. A studio was prepared by university, well equipped to register the lectures and helps to upload the PowerPoint presentations with audio to every staff member in need of this service. Staff members totally depended on face-to-face method before the pandemic has occurred. Each department or discipline has to provide the questions bank with 800 to 1,000 questions. In anatomy and embryology department, the systems and topics were given to the staff members to create questions in the form of multiple choice questions, true and false, diagrams, short answers. An Excel sheet was designed to be filled out separately for every type of questions, considering the following points. Bloom's taxonomy, denoting the level of the questions. We know we have 6 levels. Number 1, from remembering. Level 2, understanding. Level 3, applying. Level 4, analyzing. Level 5, evaluating. And the highest level, level 6, is creating. So it must be put in consideration, this Bloom's taxonomy. Also, intended learning outcomes, or LOs, each questions, to measure the skills, and it is adopted from the course specification and description. Also, the time of solving the question, it is given in seconds, 10 seconds, 15, 30, or 60 seconds, according to the question's difficulty. Then we have to consider the unit points of these questions, difficulty of the question, and giving grades 25, 50, 75, or 100. And of course, language, if it is in Arabic or in English. The answers, maximum answers for the MCQ forms. In 4 columns, marking the right answers. 2 right answers could be present. And it is a template of the Excel sheet for each question from given, or should be given to the question bank. Monetary prizes will be granted from the university to the departments on delivering their questions to the question bank unit to enhance and encourage this process. How to use the dissecting rooms next winter semester is still in planning process. Experience from this meeting could be gained also. But I think pro-dissection could be an option. Concerning the scientific research in anatomy and histology, Journal of Veterinary Anatomy received only one manuscript submitted for publication during the last 4 months. That's also without comment. So this month, Ministry of Higher Education decided 3 days a week face-to-face learning for the faculties with practical lessons need, like medicine, veterinary medicine, science, dentistry, pharmacy, etc., in groups not more than 50 students. And 2 days a week for the theoretical faculties like law, commerce, literature, in groups not more than 20 students. To conclude, education after the peak of Corona time will be a mixture of face-to-face and online or distance learning. Face-to-face method, which forms about 70%, in dissecting rooms using pro-dissected specimens and stations, answering the questions in the lectures, keeping in the social distance, masks, and face shields, as well as sanitation and continuous disinfection in mind. Online or distance learning method, which forms about 30%, mainly for the anatomy and histology, of course, lectures. I thank you for your watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saber, for that nice presentation. We'll check and see, Dr. Sampaio, if we have some questions from your group.
I will call Carol. Carol here.
Hello, everyone. Is the sound okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So first of all, I would like to thank all of our presenters. We have a few questions here. So the first question is for Dr. Sayamon. How is COVID situation in Thailand? In some images, I saw that your students are working in groups with some proximity.
The COVID situation in Thailand right now, we don't have the active case anymore. We just have the positive case from abroad that come to Thailand, and then they will be in the state quarantine. But we presume that in our country, we don't have the active case. But then we have to be in the surveillance mode as well for the student, and that we have planned for the teaching before the new semester. So we will use this regulation until the end of this semester.
Okay, next question. And how long have you been working with these students groups?
For during this time? You mean that during this COVID situation time?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we have the class about we have anatomy class 2 times a week, and the lecture will be 100% online. But for the lab class, it will be 70% online and 30% that the student will come to the faculty. And on that day, we have to teach the student twice, and we will have about 4 instructors for each class. So. And also for the histology, that we will have 2 classes per week. So in total, we have about 4 classes of both anatomy and histology in each week. This is just only for the subjects that our department are responsible for, but we have some other subjects as well, such as the subjects for the postgraduate students, such as the advanced histology class.
Okay, next question. Do you know if the COVID cases increase among students?
Increase the incidence of the COVID increase among our students?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my question.
You mean that?
After you put the students in group in the lab, I want to know if
until present we still don't have any positive case for the student, because we still have the social distancing, and that they can meet each other just only for 30%, and that we always ask them to wear the protective instruments such as the glove and the mask all the time.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Congratulations for your presentation. What program do you use to develop the anatomic models of virtual reality?
For the virtual reality, for the virtual reality, we call that the mixed reality tool, because it's the combination of the augmented reality and the virtual reality. This tool was created from the coordination from our faculty and the Faculty of Engineering, and also from the Innovation Center. I think that they have created the particular program for this kind of things, which it is not the commercial program. They have to write down the program by themselves and create and initiate the program by themselves. But what we can do from them is that we told them what we want, and we provide them the material. We provide them the figure and also the knowledge that we want it to be like this. But for the program, I think that it is the thing that they create by themselves in the Faculty of Engineering. And this mixed reality tool is belong to the Innovation Center of the university, but then it are located in our faculty for the student to use. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for Dr. Magee. What was this option in Zoom she recommends for guiding labs? Zoom plugin or something they developed?
All right, so hopefully all of you can see the Zoom plugin that I'm sharing with you. So this is the downloaded desktop Zoom application. What I used was the personal meeting room. So this is a place that is always open for users, and you can send the invitation information to someone, and then they can always meet you in this space, as opposed to a recurring meeting that you would set. You could potentially set for your class every Tuesday at 2:00. You would have them come to this particular location. We've been finding that the personal meeting room is much more like going to the same lecture hall or the same classroom all the time. And it's as someone noted earlier, the students start to get confused when they have too many places to go and too many different things to get to make sure they're in the right place all the time. So it's already embedded in the Zoom software, and it's your personal meeting ID.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Do we have any more questions?
Hello, I have one question. I don't know whether it's appropriate or not, but I'd like to ask Dr. Magee, what is an institutional cost for having the virtual anatomy?
The institutional cost is approximately $15 per user. And then as we get above 400 users, we scale that price down. So we get down to $6 a user if you have, thousands. And we do have some programs that have hundreds and hundreds of users, some of the larger university programs. So our plan is to offer an individual subscription, hopefully launching this week, for $5 a month or $40 for the year for the individual student, or $15 for the year for the university. And I say that as a per user. We don't track whether it's you or another student who uses it. For example, if you were to offer an anatomy class 3 times a year, you could rotate out your students. We only ask that you cap the access at any one time so we can monitor server traffic and make sure we have server access for your students. I answer your question?
Yes, it did. One other addendum to that is, when I'm retired now, is it possible for me to get an individual subscription like we just talked about?
Well, Bob, you're a professional educator despite already being retired, so you actually get free educator access. So anyone watching right now is a professional educator in my book. So if you want, send us your emails. We need your academic email, please, so that we can keep track of what academic institution you're associated still with. I'll fudge it for you, though. And anyone who's an educator has free access to our program.
That's certainly wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And your presentation.
That's great. Thanks.
Yes.
Yep, just let us know.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question for Dr. Saber. You are allowed to have 50 students in the lab. How will you deal with this great number of students at the lab?
We divide it in 2 because we have a dissecting room only for 25, and we have 2 dissecting rooms. So parallel. So each one for 25 students only.
Okay, thank you.
Not at all.
We have more questions. Can the speakers comment on if they are allowing students to study outside of class time, like evenings or weekends?
It means on the lab.
I can speak for Colorado as we plan for fall. We didn't allow it in spring. We're only now just having students come back, but we're asking that students limit the number of individuals in the laboratory, so they have to check in on a sheet. So that'll help us with our contact tracing should we have a positive student. And so we are allowing students to have non-scheduled laboratory periods for access.
If not allowed out of class time, are they concerned? Are you concerned that these students will not achieve the same level of knowledge as previous years?
I think we're all concerned about that. I think we're all concerned about that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Next question. How are new students getting their admission in new session 2020-2021? Online entrance or offline pen paper mode and entrance examination?
I don't know if I understand that question or if it's appropriate for me to answer. I'll let someone else handle it.
I think they're asking about how they got their admissions for the 2020 year and 2021, online or offline pen paper mode.
All of our assessments are currently online.
Even the laboratory assessments?
I don't know how that's going to be handled yet. I think we're waiting to see before that first test.
Sure.
We do have the capacity to have students, so we have iPads for the students, and we do potentially have the capacity to have them fill in forms. And I think we're debating those two, but we are being encouraged to reduce paper transmission back and forth between faculty and students.
Sure. Do you envision that the exam itself would be online, like pictures, or do you envision part of it still being the tag test?
So I'm going to describe what I understand is happening for our vet students this fall, and this is Anna Fales, who's the course director. We have been told that we are going fully online after our November break, so we call it our Thanksgiving break, and that means that the last exam will have to be fully online, and it'll be the sort of hotspot function, describe function. But the exams prior to that, the anticipation is that we will still have a laboratory component to those exams where the students go in and interact with the specimens.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Dr. Magee. Please explain more about the guided formative assessment.
So the guided assessments were created in Canvas as really challenging questions, if you will, questions that really pushed several learning objectives together into a single question. Oftentimes they were image-based or they had a video associated with them, something that really made the students stop and think. We told them that they might take them an hour to 2 to fully go through those formative assessments. So they were a guided mechanism to take them through a chunk of what we would have called the lecture and laboratory material. So the topics that we knew from teaching the course for many years that tended to be challenging for the students were the ones that we selected for those formative assessments. We would ask a question. If the student got it right or got it wrong, they had multiple attempts to take that assessment to eventually get it right. They were fairly high stakes, but then if they got it wrong, they had links to that information in both the laboratory content in our laboratory guide, the virtual program, as well as sections of lectures that they could go back and revisit to make sure that they were fully delving into that. They were also always told they could check in with the teaching assistants or the faculty if they needed more help there. So really they were the topics that we knew students struggled with, that we wanted to make sure they understood, and then either directed them to more information or directed them back to us to help them with those topics.
All right, thank you. Next question for Dr. Magee. How we can get access to the virtual anatomy program?
So we'll be monitoring the chat. You can either put your comment in the chat for the YouTube chat, or you can email us directly at vvet@colostate.edu. Just let us know who you are and send us your academic institutional email, and we'll get you access. We're also, for universities, as you're setting up your learning management systems, we have a 30-day free trial, and that'll help us to make sure that the learning management system is working with the server. Some of that also gives us some time to get the security software and accessibility activities sorted out with licensing. And so if you are interested in that, and I know many schools are starting to teach right now, their semesters are ramping back up, we can get you started on a trial, and then we can sort out the details after that.
All right, thank you, Doctor. We have a question for Dr. Saber.
Yes, please.
Thanks for the beautiful lecture. In the students writing the books, who determines each student's topic, the student or the lecturer?
The lecture, of course.
Okay.
And as we told, it was instead of making assessment, we have this idea of making a small topic or research work to be done. So we have many topics for each student. And each one have to make, it is like a review. It will not be an right research, scientific research, but a review on a special topic. For example, when I development of the kidney, for example. So they have to collect everything and have the chance to have references from the Egyptian Knowledge Bank and to collect this together and put the diagrams on not more than 10 pages. And we evaluated this one, just fail or pass. So it is a little bit, maybe a solution for this problem. Our Ministry of Education found it.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. For Dr. Magee, please explain the Zoom virtual lab.
Certainly. So the Zoom virtual lab was created using that personal meeting link. And so the students could go in at any time and either meet with their peers. And so it was always open, always available. Not all students had devices or technology to be able to meet in a shared space. And so we created the Zoom not only for them to meet with us, but for them to also meet with each other. And then once they were there, typically they would open the virtual animal anatomy program, their lecture slides, the lecture videos, though not as frequently, or they would go through the drawings and the diagrams that we would have had in the laboratory period or in the lecture exam. And so we called that our virtual laboratory space because that was where we would meet in our virtual environment, just as we would have met in the laboratory during a normal resident instruction or in-person teaching environment. And so what they would bring in and bring to that platform was really their questions, their concerns. At times we would solicit what they needed to cover. So if we were doing more of a review for the week or coming up to an exam, we would say, what are your top questions? We would have them rank them. And then once they would come into that environment, we would split them up into breakout rooms and say, this faculty person will cover this topic, this faculty person will cover this topic. And then they could move into those breakout rooms to review those subjects as they saw fit, either with the faculty person of their choice or the topic of their choice, and then move through those just as they would have in the laboratory. Oh, I want to go look at this specimen first, and then I want to go see what that person is doing over there. And we would have a person monitoring and facilitating that movement in the virtual space to help move them around and back and forth. But it essentially functioned like our laboratory. It's where we met, it was where we studied, it was where we communicated.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Next question for Dr. Sayamon. How do you manage the soft cadavers with the zoonosis and preservation?
I think that they have put some preservative in the formula for making the soft cadaver, and that all of the soft cadaver that we obtain, we will obtain that from the donor, which the owners they gave us the dead pet, and they must have the history of the vaccination and the history of the treatment that will not involve for the anatomy structure of the cadaver. And we have been using that for about 2 years ago, and we still be in the research and development period. We try to develop as much as possible, such as we try to make the vessel we try to color the vessel for the student to better dissect the soft cadaver, and we try to keep the soft cadaver as long as possible, because the last semester we have to change the soft cadaver for about 2 months. We have to change for another soft cadaver. It is not last long as the formalin fixation. So what I can say is that we are right now also in the period of research and development. But for the zoonosis, we still don't have any problem about this before. Okay. But wait and see for another 10 years that we may have something. But for sure that they put some preservative in the formula of the soft cover. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Next question for Dr. Magee. My professor tried to buy access to the VAA a while ago, but it was said that it's not available from Brazil at the time. How is it now?
I don't know what the timeline was for that access, but I think we should be able to make it work now. I've just posted the link to the virtual program. I'll put also our email address in there. But if that faculty person wants to contact me, we'll make it happen again. Sometimes we have limitations depending on what platform users have. It doesn't work with Google Classroom. It has to be something more like Canvas or Blackboard. But so far, we've been able to work with all of the standard learning management systems, so we should be able to make it happen. And there is probably a Portuguese translation in the works.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Another question. Do they still use Canvas with all these new ways to interact with students? Or Dr. Magee?
Yes, our students are still using Canvas. That's where the formative assessments are, is they're still in Canvas. And so the students do have to still come back to Canvas to do their formative assessments. They also had weekly check-ins for their lecture material that we still maintained. Those had been going from the first half of the semester. We kept those up as well. And so they were regularly on Canvas, but we don't use the Canvas discussion boards or the Canvas chat tools. We keep that type of conversation in either the laboratory. We did attempt to use for the laboratory session. So the students, we created a new Canvas shell, so a Canvas environment for the laboratory. And we tried to create a discussion board in there, but the students really didn't engage with it. They wanted to go straight to the Zoom laboratory to have those discussions, to interact with the specimens. So although we would sometimes post a question and have the teaching assistants come up with questions to challenge the students, they wanted to go to the environment and interact with them virtually rather than in the discussion board.
Okay, thank you. Next question for Dr. Magee. What is the way of exam evaluation? Are you using pass and fail, or did students get different marks?
The spring environment, we were told to give the typical A through F marks, but students could request at the end of the semester to the registrar and the provost, they could request that their grade be changed to a pass-fail. And so that was out of the instructor's hands. I don't know if anyone requested a pass-fail for our class. The distribution of grades was relatively consistent for 2019 as it was to previous years. I did mention that third exam, there were some surprisingly high-performing students based on their previous two exams, but by the fourth exam, I don't know if they leveled out or we were using a higher order. So typically A through F for that semester.
All right, thank you. No further questions so far.
Okay, good.
Do we still have time for more questions?
Yeah. We have more 2 minutes. Do you have more questions, Carol?
Okay, I think that's all.
Okay. Then I have one question for all presenters. Concerning the exams that you are using some platforms like Google Forms, do you give some limits about the time? Give some time limits for the students to fill out all the forms? What if you did this? How is the average of time for each question?
So when I used Google Forms, that was how I recorded the student performance. And so the time that I allowed for the student to answer depended on the question. And there was usually some degree of coaching sometimes. It's very much like your doctor rounds in the clinics. I push students until they are done. They have no more right answers for me. And so, the time was really up to me to take them through those questions. And then I would fill out the form and have my notes in the form. I didn't use Google Forms for the students to directly fill them out, except for some group presentations where the students would comment on each other's group presentations as you would provide feedback for, was the speaker clear, were the transitions clear, were the slides clear? And then they would provide that assessment for their peers when they would watch presentations in the case studies class synchronously. But otherwise, for an actual true assessment, I didn't use Google Forms for that purpose. And I'm sorry if that was misinterpreted earlier.
And may I share some of our online examination? We have been using Blackboard, and the time that we give the student is depend on the type of the question. If it is the multiple choice, we will give about not more than 40 seconds per each question. But if it is the short answer, we will give about 45 seconds for each question. But if it is the essay, then it depends on the time that the instructor of that section want the student to do that test.
May I add something also?
Okay.
The hardness of the questions in the questions bank. So we can make a collection of hard. We give 100 or 75 or 50 and 25, for example. That is the notes. And also we can consider the time of the difficulty. So some questions needs only 10 seconds to be answered. Some have a long time, till 1 minute. So we can compromise this type of questions and the time of all the question sheet. So it is all in the question bank, and we can make this collection of very hard question or middle or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're out of questions now. Thank you all for your answers. Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Thank you for the nice question discussion time. We'll move into our first oral presentation of the day, but actually our third oral presentation is by Catia Massari from University of São Paulo. And she's going to talk about the content, didactic content for virtual learning, as well as in the Portuguese language specifically, but also using 3D anatomical printing techniques. Dr. Massari.
Hello, everybody. Are you listening?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I hope this presentation is not in Portuguese.
No, it's not in Portuguese. It will be in English. Thank you. Can you see my slides?
It was and now no.
Not yet.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we can. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for introduction. My name is Catia Massari. I am a veterinary doctor from Brazil, and my PhD was in anatomy of domestic and wild animals. And my advisor is Professor Dr. Maria Angélica Miglino in School of Veterinary Medicine and Animal Science in University of São Paulo, Brazil. And I'm here today to talk about the didactic content for virtual learning environment in Portuguese language and 3D printing as an anatomical technique. Well, at first I'd like to introduce where I am, where I live. I live in Brazil. This is my state, the state of São Paulo, and this is the University of São Paulo. And here we speak Portuguese. Dissecting cadavers is the method of choice for studying the shape, layout, and structure of tissues and organs that compose the animal body. But especially nowadays, other teaching methods and anatomical techniques can be complementary. So this project aimed at developing didactic content for the virtual learning environment. I think everybody is in the same situation in corona pandemic. The novel coronavirus has affected educational development, and it justifies the use of B-learning or blended learning methodology. During the COVID-19 outbreak, professors have been teaching via internet to minimize the academic gap and guarantee the continuity of teaching and learning process, even at a distance. And flipped classroom is very important because the primary educational materials can be studied previously at home, and downloading STL files provides the students to build replicas by themselves, and wherever they are, if a 3D printer is available, the replicas can be included and can be handled at home in a conventional classroom or even in a library. The purpose of this methodology is allowing students to be able to more hands-on activities when classes return. So the methods involve 90 academic models or 90 mini courses that were elaborated based on anatomical veterinaria and hosted in Google Classroom in Portuguese language, dedicated to Brazilian students. It includes introduction to veterinary anatomy, osteology, arthrology, myology, spleninology, including here the digestive apparatus, respiratory, urogenital apparatus, and peritoneal and endocrine glands. We also developed material for angiology, neuroanatomy, sense organs, and common integuments. So each has a formative path. There are 9 steps. We start with an initial test. Then there is a didactic text, a glossary, video lesson, 3D printing, diagnostic imaging, clinical case study, a final test using Google Forms, and finally a satisfaction survey. Well, canine anatomical corpses were scanned by or using computer tomography to create prototypes in ABS material. ABS is a thermoplastic filament. ABS means acrylonitrile butadiene styrene. And here you are seeing the medical scanner, a computer tomography, the digital images in icon file, and the synthetic prototypes produced by the 3D printer. And as a result, the platform can be accessed from Google for Education, Google Classroom, and it can be used to students to access information before face-to-face meeting returns, optimizing the future classroom time to be dedicated to discussions and dissections. Maybe you can be asking me, where is the link of 3D printing to distance learning or to non-contact education? And I'd like to explain that at first, traditional anatomical techniques had been used to prepare original collection in anatomy laboratory. Then CT scanning was made of anatomical structures in diagnostic imaging service. It generates DICOM file that must to be converted in STL files, and the anatomical model can be printed at home from any location, or even students can buy the same replica if a 3D printer is not available, we can print and deliver it by postal service, even from Brazil. And I also had the opportunity to print a central nervous system, a generic model from human brain. I have the opportunity to work with wild species or specimens like Agidelphus albiniventris or an opossum. And I concluded that the platform to use for online theoretical classes associated to a 3D printer can offer some tools to students understand the form function complex, and the 3D printed models can be a viable alternative to original specimens when used in anatomy education, also at home. And although this methodology hasn't been used yet, it could mitigate many difficulties found in veterinary anatomy. I'd like to thank you for your attention. This is my email, and special thanks to World Association of Veterinary Anatomists for the opportunity to be here, and especially for my advisor, Professor Magee. Thank you.
Thank you for your long presentation. And I think that we can go to the other presentation, and then we can leave the questions for the final. Okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
Then,
Okay.
now we have the second oral presentation. The presenter is Professor Shireen A, Texas Tech University. She will talk about emotional intelligence and remote learning in anatomy education, practical tips. Me?
Can you hear me? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can hear you, but no screen.
Not screen.
Oh, no screen. Okay, hold on. Oh, because I did not share.
How can we see?
And that makes sense.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's better. So thank you, Dr. Sampaio. Thank you, everybody, for being here, especially on a Sunday. I'm going to switch here a little here and talk about another important learning domain, which is the affective or emotional domain. So we're going to cover some technical tips that are evidence-based, and I know from my own experience that they work while remote teaching. These technical tips are related to emotional intelligence and remote learning in anatomy. The classroom is an emotional place. Okay, that may seem odd to you, but it's true, and it is subject of our session. So first, we will discuss the types of emotion that can be found in a teaching session. Then what's emotional intelligence? Why do we need to be emotionally intelligent? How can we be emotionally intelligent during remote teaching, especially during a pandemic? So what type of emotions you can find in your classroom, whether it's physical or virtual? Well, all what you can think of or not even think. Students are human and they have life outside the school. They can bring classroom sadness from a life event, happiness, excitement, confusion, frustration, worry, you name it. This is just the norm. But during these crazy times we live in, this is all even more prominent. There are also different academic-related emotions that can be found in the classroom. Achievement emotions related to achievement, such as enjoyment of learning or anxiety and sadness from failure. Epistemic emotions are emotions triggered by a surprise about a new task or initial confusion. Topic emotions are related to the topic presented. Social emotions related to teachers and peers' interaction in the classroom. Basically, all these emotions exist in your classroom, and they can even change over time. Just think of our current situation. Not all of us or all of our students think of COVID-19 and its impact the same. It's variable and does vary every day or every moment. So what's emotional intelligence? It's your ability to recognize and understand emotions in yourself and others, and your ability to use this awareness to manage your behavior and relationships. This is extremely important when it comes to learning. The big question now, why do we need to be emotionally intelligent? Because we know that emotion can have a strong influence on learning. Positive emotions relate to teaching materials, enhance learning, results in deep learning strategies, and promote self-regulation of learning. Let's think of the other side of the coin. Negative emotion causes distraction away from learning and may decrease motivation and results in service learning, basically the opposite of positive emotion. Let's get to work. How can we be emotionally intelligent while teaching, especially in a remote environment? First, do not forget that emotion is contagious, as much as COVID actually in this respect. It is in your hand to transfer positive or negative emotions to your students. So we should promote positive emotion and enjoyment of learning. Students can enjoy learning when the subject is perceived as valuable and interesting. One way to do this is to relate it to their future goals. Let's get practical. Your takeaway from today should be your students are people, not screens, and they should be treated as such. So portray your students not as the left side of my screen, but as the right side of my screen. They have emotions that need to be recognized, respected, and dealt with. So practical tip number 1, send a welcome email to your students before class starts. It will set them up for a good start, make it warm and welcoming. Let's say now it is your first remote session. I would like you to think of what you normally do when you meet new people in person. Would you please write your answer in the chat box? I'll give you like a couple of seconds. Okay, I don't see the chat box. I believe that you're writing. And I believe the answer was to say hi, hello, nice to meet you, like any form of greeting. So please do the same thing in remote teaching. Greet your students. It will make them feel good. It primes them for learning. Then acknowledge their feelings during these difficult times. They need this. And for practical sessions, the best step to give you is orient your students. It's extremely difficult to know where we are on a screen. Everything may look different. Identify these pieces. You just never know what they are thinking. As you can see on the screen, you may think it's a dog, you may think it's a cat. Who knows on the screen? And do not forget to keep good and frequent communications. And I don't think I can overestimate the importance of personalized feedback, such as the case in face-to-face learning. And if they decided upon mode in your school was asynchronous sessions, you still can deliver synchronous meetings on Zoom, like Dr. Magee mentioned, or whatever mode that you can choose. Students need this direct connection with the instructor. It helps form a rapport between students and the instructor, and it allows discussion and questions. Basically, it allows the environment of active learning, and you can also give feedback on the spot if you're one-on-one with them. And probably the big tip I would like to provide is make the videos short. And please let me repeat that. Make the videos short. Just cap it at 10 minutes for them to actually learn. And in any case, remember, students are people. They have certain attention span. They need breaks. I know that some of you now would say they can pause the video if they need a break. My response to you is, you're right. They can pause the video, but it will make you not emotionally intelligent. They will think that you were not considerate. And our talk is about how to be emotionally intelligent to maximize learning. You could also use questions and polling techniques. They're very helpful techniques to maintain attention and promote engagement like online. And back the idea that students are people, use emojis and humor related to teaching materials, not just out of the blue jokes. All of that can actually keep them tuned in. And probably the biggest tip to give you, be you. Basically, be the human that you are. I remember a former colleague of mine who was convincing me to use scripts for practical videos. I was never been able to convince him that I was a human too, just like my student. And my student liked me the way I was, just talking like a human, not as a recorded tape. In conclusion, there are 3 domains of learning: affective or emotional domain of learning, cognitive, and behavior domain. All are equally important. We often ignore the first one, but all should be considered while teaching face-to-face or remote teaching. Be you, treat students as people. It's actually rewarding to you too. Teaching, I will just tell you from my experience, teaching anatomy remotely last semester was just difficult for me as it was for everyone else. I missed seeing students face-to-face. I acted like a human being. I never used a script. I was very organized and I knew exactly what I wanted to say in my practical videos, but I never used a script. My students surprised me by creating a very cute, touching video for me on YouTube. This is the link on the screen. If you want to check it out, it's about 4 minutes, but it's basically provide an example of that human connection that does help students learning. And this is my summary statement. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them. And I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Okay.
Hello. Thank you, doctors, for your brilliant presentations.
Thank you.
So we have a few questions here. Dr. Hafez, the attendants answer your questions. They said, introduce yourself, smile, greet them warmly with a hello.
So I did that because my sessions were we were 130 students and also in the practical videos. So I did not ask them to introduce themselves. But what I did, I studied the poster that has all their pictures in the beginning, and I called them by name.
And if you go actually to the videos link that I share, they really appreciated that I remembered where they were sitting on like the first semester, and I was just calling them by name during my videos and during my lectures, just pretending that they were sitting with me. To be honest, I did that for my own sanity, because I was about to be crazy talking to myself in an empty lecture hall. But again, I was just myself, and they liked that connection. So
I have a comment. May I?
Sure.
I think it is a matter of culture. I remember when I was in Australia and began to teach for my students. Usually I have to say good morning or good day. So I was criticized or blamed. How you can say that you are not in school and you are not waiting to respond of the students. Good morning, sir. I didn't know so, but it's a culture thing. I used to salute my students. So that's my comment. It is a matter of culture, maybe.
I don't know about, again, I don't know about that. I don't know what I don't know, but I think any human being would like to be greeted. So
sure.
I warmly greet my students, and I make a big deal, and I let them stand in the beginning, exercise before we do everything. Just get up and be with me. I am here. You should be here. We're going to be here together, and we're going to learn it together. So I don't think, again, I don't know, but I don't think anybody would be offended to be greeted.
Blamed. It's fine. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a question for Dr. Massari. Will it be accessible for other universities in Brazil?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Will it be accessible for other universities in Brazil?
Not yet. This methodology hasn't been used yet. It is available only in USP, University of São Paulo, but we have future plans to allow other universities to access, but not yet.
Okay.
I have a comment, Hakeem. You know, my daughter...
Can you get closer a little bit, because I can't hear you well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My daughter is 8 years old, and he is having online classes now. And your presentation reminds me the way that her teacher dealing with the kids, because it's complicated to deal with the kids online.
Yes, but again, kids or adults, they are people. They want to be treated as people, not screens. Like, talk to them to talk to you. It does make a difference. But mostly, we always focus on the cognitive and technical domains of learning, and we just ignore emotion. And if they don't feel good while learning, they're not going to learn. So we want them to learn. So this is important for them, just to feel welcomed.
Yeah, it makes a difference to learn.
It does make a difference. There's a lot of research about it. So this is not just really my own experience. This is research-based, evidence-based techniques. So.
Yeah. Thank you for your presentation. Carol, do you have a question?
We have a few lovely comments here for Dr. Hafez. Thank you for being you. That was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for this really excellent lecture. Communication and emotional intelligence is extremely important, and sometimes it has too little attention.
Thank you.
We have a question. Is it really necessary to retain the human factor in a virtual class and remember if one is talking to humans, even if one cannot see them? It's not really a question, it's a comment. It's really necessary to retain the human factor in the virtual class. And remember, you're talking to humans, even if you cannot see them.
Yeah, actually, the response from my student, again, if you check the link, they made a whole video for me on YouTube using children's songs. Just they called it the video, "We appreciate you." Again, I was touched. So it's we know all, we're anatomists, we're just the anatomy geeks, how much we love anatomy and how we love teaching. So I think it helps us and them to just, again, stay connected and just help them. It's good. It's research based, but it's good too. So.
Okay. Question for Dr. Massari. I have the 3D printing for an anatomical model is cost effective in comparison to other methods, because in many countries the cost is an issue.
Yeah, thank you for your question. At first, I'd like to say that there are two kinds of materials that you can print, that you can use in your 3D printer, PLA and ABS. These are the two most common FDM desktop printing materials. ABS is less expensive than polylactic acid, but in Brazil, the price to me is approximately $35-$40 for one canine school, for example, or for one canine pelvis, for example. But you have to think about the maintenance cost to prepare the original collection. I think it can be pros and cons, but the price is still a problem, depending for how much you can get the material.
Okay, thank you, Doctor, for your answer. I think we don't have any more questions.
Excuse me. I have one for Dr. Massari. In your university, does the university pay for these 3D models, or do the student pay for them? Do you make them at the university and give them to students, or do the students go someplace and print them?
No, the students must buy the replica if they don't have a 3D printer, because we can print and deliver it by postal service, or the students can print it by themselves and wherever they are at home if they have a 3D printer.
Can you tell me how long typically it would take to print a canine skull?
A canine
I know it depends on the printer.
Yes, it's 20 hours for a brachiocephalic or a dolichocephalus skull.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a comment here for Dr. Hafez from the BMS Animal Anatomy. Our profession struggles with imposter syndrome. It can be important to share weaknesses and struggles, especially in this environment, to remind them that we are humans too.
Would you repeat the question again? My voice was not connected well.
It's not a question, it's actually a comment. Our profession struggles with imposter syndrome. it can be important to share our weakness and struggles, especially in this environment, to remind them that we are humans too.
Definitely. We actually, even before COVID-19, we had a group that arranged like a meeting for imposter syndrome, and they invited me to that meeting to actually speak to students about, again, be you. it's that simple. So that again, those students, this kind of attitude will really help with those students well. I agree. Definitely.
Yes. Do we still have time for more questions? I think we're out of questions.
We have more time. Do we have more questions?
No further questions here at the moment.
Okay, then I think that's it. Okay, before we close the weekend presentations, I wonder if anyone wants to say anything more?
Can I say one thing more that I was worried of the time I didn't mention during the presentation? Do not put last year lectures. Really, for everyone, I surveyed the students about that. They hate using last year lectures. They consider it as the teachers are lazy. I didn't do it. I was fortunate just because I totally refused to do that. And because I did not think that was personal, but some of my colleagues did it, and students hated it. Because they say, oh, you just not, basically they consider the instructor who did that as not working this year. You just give them the lecture and not working, and they consider it as offense. So, and I did like a big survey about COVID-19 emotion. So I have a tough responses that's not published yet, but it will be published. And that was one major thing. Do not choose last year lectures. Do a new one. Just like speak to the student directly this year, not last year's.
But may I comment, many universities now record all lectures, and they say, well, maybe next year you aren't here, so we can just use your old lectures.
They're wrong.
I agree. Yeah.
I had my own recorded lectures the last year that was available, but I refused to use it. I recorded two lectures, like again, midnight and in the middle of the night for the time, but I did it. So because it doesn't help with their learning.
Yeah. I have one other comment for Dr. Nong about soft cadavers. I'm not familiar with this terminology. In Germany and in Europe, and around the world, there's a process called the teal solution to use. Are you referring to this, or are you referring to something else?
For the soft cadaver, we use that word because the texture of the soft cadaver is something look like the real dead specimen, but when compared to the formalin fixation, it's rather harder than the soft cadaver, and then the student cannot have the actual feeling of the texture of the structure, anatomical structure, such as the internal organ or the vessel, something like that. So I think that is another thing from what you said. Okay.
So can you tell us what you use? Do you drain the body of blood and put in some sort of solution to make the cadaver soft and preserve it?
Yeah, they didn't drain the blood at all, but then they have to put the formula, the chemical formula, the preservation through the blood vessel, and also they have inject by in the abdominal cavity and also in the thorax cavity, and also some of the thick muscles for this kind of soft cadaver, and then they have to wrap in the plastic wrap and keep that for about a week to make the chemical go in can penetrate to the whole body.
Okay.
It's just like when we did the formalin specimen.
So is this a proprietary solution that's secret that we can't, that no one can know, or can you share it?
For the formula,
Yes.
Sincerely, I didn't know. I didn't know the formula as well, because this is the soft cadaver center that they have been established from the university. They have their particular formula, and they try to develop the formula for each year. But then they didn't tell us what is the formula that they use. But we can know only that they use some of the preservative to preserve the specimen.
Yes.
Okay.
Dr. Sampaio, I don't remember the graduate student's name, but you had a student who worked on some sort of formula for preservation that was not. How was that preservation?
Yeah.
Was it soft?
Yeah, it's soft. He's working with tannic acids, and he's soft. He's until now, he's a kind of secret, because he started to try to, business.
Make some money. Yeah, sure. Does anyone use the teal solution from Austria and Germany? Teal solution. Has anyone used that?
Not yet.
I didn't use it specifically. However, I was teaching in medical school too in Virginia. And the medical school, they were getting some of their cadavers, like it's called the Theo cadaver.
Yes.
And I did deal with these cadavers, so I can tell you that they look real. Like, it's scary. They look like like are preserved, but they look real. But we've used them before we left, we've used them for about 3 or 4 months, and they were okay, but I don't know what happens after that. So up to 3 months, they were okay. But they looked real, but at the same time, they were very dark.
Yes,
So like, for me, it was very hard to even see blood visits. And of course, in humans, they don't inject with latex anyway, so it was even harder to see it on those cadavers more than the normal fixed cadaver.
We used it once. Go ahead.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Okay. Please, you first.
Thank you. I was in Murcia, Spain for 3 months, and we embalmed some with it. But the problem, for some reason, and I can't remember, was listeria. Some bacterial infection went through the whole body, and they became like balloons. They made themselves. But that's the only experience I've had, other than in Austria with human cadavers. But I'm aware of the medical school in Virginia, because our associates here at LMU are going to try and get some of their cadavers, except they won't let them go across state lines, so it's been a problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Henry, it is a matter, I think it is a matter of secret things, because we have to import from Australia the cadavers from USA, and we have to import 10 dogs injected, and then they never let us know how we use it, or what are the components of this solution. So it is a matter of, I think, commercial. I think so. Some have the secret of this one and have to not to buy it.
Yes, that's
my experience. Yeah.
Like the prize pie at the family reunion.
Yes.
Tell you the ingredients except one.
Yes.
Bob, it likes perfect solution.
I must say,
solution.
I have never used.
Yeah, from North Carolina.
No.
No, it's not that. It's different. It's teal it has a little bit of formaldehyde, and it has 25 different ingredients. I don't know, mostly chemicals that are non-harmful.
I know. I'm just remember.
Yeah. May I say something? There is some published papers on the solutions used in embalming. It is published in Germany. It is already in. You can use it.
Yes.
From Munich,
It's not secret.
Yeah, no, now, not anymore.
Yeah. May I share a little bit out the soft cadaver? I have been asking for the people who did this soft cadaver that kind of the ingredient that they have been using, and they said that there is nothing harmful. They just put the ingredient in the different ratio, just like when we made the sausage. That is what they told me.
So do you have problems with students eating dog legs at night?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another problem.
That's why I don't like sausage.
I'd like to say about the cost, the price of 3D model in dollars. For example, a canine femur will be approximately $30 or $35. But the cost depends very much the size and the density of the anatomical model. The 3D printer, the machine, costs about $2,000 here in Brazil. And there are some pros and cons regarding to the use of synthetic anatomical models instead of natural models, and the production costs can be low, but you have to excluding the initial investment in equipment. But traditional technique also can be low if you exclude the initial investment in structures of the laboratory, such as chemical products.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I want to thank everyone on behalf of the WAVA team for participating in this. And I tell you, Marco and his wife came up with a wonderful idea to have this conference online, and it's been really well received. And I just want to thank Marco and Bia for developing this, and the students that help him. And it certainly opens doors. This is a positive thing that I think we can relate to COVID, is that it's made us think outside the box, and I think that can only enhance our teaching.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
See you next week.
I have a few questions.
Yeah, next week, yeah.
Oh, questions. More questions.
Questions here.
I would like to thank actually, I would like to thank the presenters from yesterday and for today for the outstanding presentations. And thank you to the students too, because they are giving us the technical support to be here. And thank you, Bob, for sharing with me the conduct of this meeting. And then see you next weekend. Next weekend we have more exciting presentations.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Shireen.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
You? So
a few questions.
Marco, did you hear there's still a question?
Yeah.
Save for next time, or?
No.
Do we leave it for next time?
Yeah. The question is for what presenter? I don't know if we
Do we still have the time?
To whom? Yeah.
Who's the question?
We have a question here for Dr. Massari.
Okay.
Yes,
He's here.
How much the 3D printed models can be cost in dollar? Example, the femur.
yes, a femur can be cost approximately $30. And a 3D printer, the machine, can be cost about $2,000 in Brazil. But the price of the model depends a lot about size and density. Canine femur, it's approximately $30.
Okay,
Thank you.
A question for everyone. How can we make our students to participate within virtual learning?
Well, I don't know. It seems to me like what we saw today, especially from Dr. Magee's in Colorado, that they could be some of the leading people to talk with, because they have covered many bases. Two reasons: because they have been preparing virtual ideas for many years, and so it's amazing that then they can go ahead and develop ways to at least inspire the students, or maybe even force the students to participate with their interactive things. So obviously interaction of any kind would certainly be one of the main ways. How do we make, same question is, how can we make students appreciate lectures? I've always felt I was a very good lecturer, but I could never engage every student. So Dr. Hafez is on the human part of this. She came from the standpoint of human, the students are human, and the comment at the end was that so are professors, but with that human element, it takes all kinds of tricks to find the right solution.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for your presentations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Marco, I'll see you next week.
Okay.
Saturday. Yeah.
See you next week, Saturday morning.
Albia, thank you. It's wonderful.